Really.
Nations are meeting in New York this evening to focus on a way forward in the Middle East. The so-called quartet of the European Union, the United States, Russia and the UN are looking at the impact of withdrawing direct aid to the Palestinian Authority since Hamas came to power. Our Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, is in New York. We can talk to him now. Jeremy, what is the likely focus, precise focus of these talks?
Well, the meetings are going on still at the moment, but the indications coming from diplomats who are close to it all say that the Americans are preparing to soften their position on the funding of the Palestinians. Got to stress the fact they're not softening their position on the funding of the Hamas government, which they regard as a terrorist organization like the European Union does. But what they're talking about are ways of trying to get round the government, various bypass mechanisms to put money into the pockets of Palestinians, teachers, doctors, and of course security forces as well.
Could we talk a little more about the impact of the withdrawal of aid? What is the impact being reported by the Palestinians?
Well, there have been stern warnings being brought to the people here at these meetings about the situation on the ground there. Warnings from the World Bank saying that the current situation effectively isn't sustainable, and also images from the ground. The second day of gun exchanges, gun battles, firefights may be too strong a word, on the streets of Gaza between people from Hamas and people from Fatah, who they defeated in the election. Now, all those men with guns haven't had any money coming into their pockets for 2 months now, and the calculation is that if some income starts flowing, the levels of tension may be reduced. Now, here in New York, there were stern warnings as well this morning to the quartet from Arab foreign ministers who briefed all of them. And they said there that the risks are very considerable, risks of civil war on the Palestinian side.
Jeremy, in New York, thank you very much. The United States has pushed for a strong UN resolution on Iran's nuclear program, despite opposition from Russia and China. President Bush has stressed that diplomacy remains the best option for dealing with the issue, despite the difficulty in reaching agreement. His comments came as the White House said it would not send a formal reply to a letter from the Iranian leader, President Ahmadinejad. A couple from Greater Manchester are urgently looking for a foreign clinic to store embryos created by IVF treatment. Michelle Hickman and Martin Heimers have been told that the 6 embryos they created should now be destroyed under current law. This is because a 5-year time limit for using embryos for surrogacy expired yesterday, as Jill Higgins reports.
In here are 6 healthy embryos. The couple who created them still want them, but the law says they should be destroyed. There's a strict time limit that only applies to embryos for surrogacy.
Several thousand embryos are stored in these canisters, mostly for conventional IVF, where the embryos put back into the mother who wants the child. And in those cases, they can be stored for 10 years. But with surrogacy, they can only be stored for 5 years, even though a third party is required to carry the child. So it can be a much more difficult and lengthy process.
It's certainly been hard for Michelle and Martin. Friends and relatives were unable to help, and advertising for a surrogate is illegal.
We have tried for 6 years every possible means. We had to fight to create these embryos. We've had to fight to try and find a surrogate, and to just say, okay, you know, speaking to the little embryos, you've had your 5 years, bye-bye. We couldn't do that.
3, 2, 1,
Because they're desperate to have a brother or sister for their son Robert. It was when he was born that Michelle had complications, needing her womb removed. So creating embryos and finding a surrogate to carry them is their only option.
This is the form that we'll be sending to the HFEA.
The couple have the support of their private clinic. It's acting unlawfully by holding on to the embryos and, strictly speaking, could lose its licence. But the HFEA is allowing an application to store the embryos abroad. It's the only way. Because they're intended for surrogacy, their time in the UK has expired.
It is some quirk, and it is just manifestly wrong. In fact, if anything, there should have been special provisions saying that if you've got embryos that have been specially created to go the surrogate host, that the storage period could be extended liberally, not illiberally. It's illogical.
Lots of that.
The law came about to put couples off surrogacy because it's complicated and difficult, but attitudes are changing. The couple have experts and the fertility regulators on their side in wanting the law to change. The government says it's under review. Jill Higgins, BBC News.
The new Community Secretary, Ruth Kelly, says that building more affordable homes is a personal priority. Housing was an important issue in last week's local elections in England, and deciding where new homes are built is, of course, one of the most sensitive factors. Our economics editor, Evan Davis, has been following the debate in Reading.
How can we find space for the kids to play? Here in old gravel pits on the edge of Reading, they're talking about turning the Ducks play space into new homes for 16,000 people. Rule of thumb, you can get about 25 houses into an acre. By my calculation, that would say maybe 10 into this piece of grassland here. It's a start, but you're going to need a lot of grassland. Britain does have 60 million acres of land, enough for 1.5 billion homes if we wanted them, but we don't. The supply of housing is constrained. The difficulty is the demand is growing, as we found at a council estate on the Granville Road.
3-bedroom properties in Reading are really like gold dust. You'll only get one if someone's been evicted or if someone dies, really.
Penny is getting a bigger home after years of waiting, but if she could list all her problems in life, where would housing come on your list? Is it a
It
sort
would
of
definitely be first, definitely.
how up there on the balcony? Housing was considered a top problem too.
We've tried to exchange, but because the flats along here have got such a bad name or reputation, nobody wants to come here from other areas. So
you can't get out because no one wants to come
because
in.
of the reputation, yeah. So we're stuck. We're stuck.
Pretty much.
I'm on the list.
Around the estate they agreed. Politicians have overlooked housing, and what they really want is a house. Rising demand with a constrained supply. The demand for housing can only go up, along with the UK population, because the official government projections for our population over the next 25 years are that it'll grow by 7 million, mostly from inward migration. Reading tells their migration story too, with 10,000 recent arrivals from Poland. But tellingly, the Poles we spoke to were pretty flexible about accommodation. How easy was it for you to find a place to live?
How easy? We just go to agency, ask, we need house with...
How many of you are living in the place?
It's 8 people.
Whether they'll always want to share rooms is less obvious. The rule is, as we get more affluent, we demand more housing. Space is tight, which is why they want to build here. It may not be good news for the Ducks. Evan Davis, BBC News, Reading.
A 4-year-old boy from the slums of eastern India who ran a 40-mile marathon in soaring temperatures may be stopped from competing in future. Officials had praised the boy and promoted him as a bit of a local celebrity, but doctors and human rights organisations were very critical and warned that his health might suffer. Navdeep Dhariwal sent this report.
He's captured the imagination of the subcontinent, the infant who ran into the record books. Budhir Singh's phenomenal powers of endurance were tested to the limit on this 40-mile marathon. Egged on by supporters, and after 7 hours in the sweltering heat, the 4.5-year-old was exhausted. At one point, his legs buckled beneath him. The following day, Budhir insisted he could cope. After resting in a bath, I feel fine, he said. Born in a slum and sold for £10 because his mother couldn't afford to feed him, Budhir is now in the care of his trainer. The coach has been accused of exploiting the boy for profit.
He is happy. He runs because he wants to. I don't force him.
While most children are desperately trying to escape the heat, 4-year-old Budhir has been thrust into the limelight. India is divided about his fate. Could his be a unique talent blessed by God? Or is the child a victim of appalling exploitation?
Medical tests now show Budhir's long-term health could be in serious danger. With no official ban and a number of lucrative TV commercials in the pipeline, the road ahead for India's miracle boy runner is likely to be a long and arduous one. Navdeep Dhariwal, BBC News, Delhi.
10 o'clock news hour continues on BBC News 24 with a look at tomorrow's papers, a business roundup, and in sport, Spurs call for a replay against West Ham after 10 players were struck down by food poisoning. And here on BBC One, I'll be back with the headlines after we've joined our news teams where you are. Bye for now.
Good evening, I'm Annabelle Tiffin. 1,600 Liverpool fans who had their FA Cup final tickets stolen during a van raid are being told they can't go to the game. Officials at the Millennium Stadium say it won't reissue the tickets on safety grounds. Abby Jones reports.
This was the goal that secured Liverpool's place in the FA Cup final. Success fans hope to see repeated at Cardiff. But 1,600 supporters discovered their precious tickets had been stolen in a raid on a Royal Mail van. Then, even worse news, those tickets won't be replaced. Lifelong fans like cab driver Mark Howard won't be going to Cardiff.
I've been to the games that have qualified for me for the ticket, and that ticket's been snatched away, so words really can't say enough about how strongly I feel about it.
The Millennium Stadium says it's made its decision on safety grounds. If it were to reissue tickets with the stolen ones still in circulation, it says too many people could turn up at the ground. Liverpool Football Club says it's just penalising innocent victims of robbery. Even if the money is refunded, many fans have already booked accommodation and transport to Cardiff. Some are so upset they're calling on both teams to refuse to play each other unless the tickets are sorted out.
There is legislation that in a contract of this type, if the conditions aren't fair, then they're void, and the FA can't hide behind them.
Police say anyone who goes to Cardiff with a stolen ticket will be arrested, but that's little comfort to those fans whose FA Cup dream has become a nightmare.
Health unions now fear as many as 1,200 jobs could be lost at 4 of the region's hospitals. This morning, the Executive Board of the Pennine Acute Trust confirmed it has plans to shed 800 posts. Union leaders say that means the actual number of people who lose their jobs will be much higher. A man who shot himself at the end of a 20-hour siege in Lancashire has died in hospital. Police say John Butler was involved in a domestic incident in Orrell on Sunday night. Armed police then followed him to Skelmersdale, where he turned the gun on himself. The Independent Police Complaints Commission will manage an investigation into his death. A Lancashire family say they were horrified when a major power company wrote to their daughter, who died a few weeks earlier. Powergen had written inviting her to ring them and had even addressed the letter to Miss Rachel Clear, deceased. Powergen has now apologised. Dave Guest has the story.
Rachel Clear was a young woman who loved life. Sadly, her life was taken by cancer. She died in March.
Yes, it's traumatic really, because she's too young and just getting a career. That's the hard bit. She just, after all these years, settled down and just got herself a career as a teacher, which she wanted to do.
So imagine how distressed Rachel's family were to receive this letter from Powergen just a few weeks after her death. The company have actually addressed it to Miss Rachel Clear, deceased. The letter goes on to say, if you wish to discuss your account, please feel free to call us.
It's the wording, expecting Rachel to ring them. You know, it's just devastating, really. You think you're managing and then something like that comes along.
Powergen have now apologised for their insensitivity and at the request of the family have made a donation to the local hospice.
In this case, it was human error that was at fault. We've retrained the customer service advisor who made the error in the first place. We've rebriefed all our advisors in the company on the correct procedures to follow, and we are making sure that we do as much as we can to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Anne Cook says she hopes the company really has learned from its mistake.
Well, now back to the FA Cup final, and in Liverpool there's something of a rallying cry. Shout it out and you'll be greeted in return. It's a cry that's inspired Liverpool to victory in Istanbul. Now it's hoped the man in black can inspire the boys in red to victory once again. Jane Barrett reports.
In case you didn't recognise that,
or this. It's the Johnny Cash classic. It's the song they say led the Reds to victory in Istanbul. And if it worked then, perhaps it can work again. Ring of Fire's been reworked by Ian McCulloch of Echo and the Bunnymen. Faster, but just as infectious.
It just sounds fantastic when they do it, because it's almost like they're mocking the other team as well. It's not in a kind of really subtle way.
I really got into it in Istanbul and went to the final, and everybody was singing it during and after the game, all the way home on the planes, on the coaches.
Dun 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 dun.
Fire. Doesn't do a great deal for me, really, no.
Not all Reds fans approve, but if it does the trick on Saturday, who cares?
Well, a packed Old Trafford welcomed back one of its heroes tonight for one night only. Roy Keane may have ended his Manchester United career under a cloud, but all that was forgotten as the former skipper took to the pitch with his children. Thousands from his new team, Celtic, even travelled to the game. He played the first half for them, then switched to the team he'd served for 12.5 years. Most of the £2.5 million raised from tonight's testimonial is expected to go to charity. The game ended 1-0 to United.
I'd like to thank the players. I know it's been a long season and probably this is the last thing they needed, but I do appreciate it. To United and Celtic, thanks very much. Hope you've had a great night. It's something I'll remember for the rest of my life. And all the best.
Let's take a look at the weather now. Dry and misty overnight with temperatures dropping to 8, and tomorrow it will be sunny and warm. And that's all from the Late team. Have a very good night.
Main news tonight, the terror suspect Abu Qatada has launched his battle to avoid deportation. He's accused of close links with Al-Qaeda, but his lawyers say that he'll face torture if he's sent back to Jordan. And a report on the Buncefield depot fire says it was caused by an overflow which went unchecked for 40 minutes. Newsnight starting on BBC Two, but from all of us here on the 10 o'clock team, have a good night.
On the 4th anniversary of her death, a Panorama special looks back at the story of motor neurone sufferer Diane Pretty, who unsuccessfully campaigned to change the law on assisted suicide. A good time to say goodbye is tomorrow night at 7:30 here on BBC One.
Hello there, good evening. I know where I'd like to be at the moment, Western Scotland. For the second day in a row, it's been the warmest place, 24 Celsius on the Isle of Skye, that's 75 Fahrenheit, lots of sunshine as well, and more sunshine to come tomorrow. In fact, not just for Scotland, but for many parts of the British Isles. A very nice spell of weather for us. So there's been a lot of sunshine then for northern parts of the British Isles today. In the south, well, we have had some troublesome low cloud around the coast. We've also had the cloud bubbling up a little with the odd shower, but nowhere near as many showers as we thought, thankfully. So it has been a fairly decent end to the day. Having said that, we have drawn in a few showers from the southern North Sea just recently, some of those drifting west across Kent and Sussex, soon dying out. Otherwise, it'll be a fairly calm night, some mist and low cloud around the coast of Wales through the Bristol Channel, also across the northern and western Isles of Scotland, and a little bit chilly in some parts of Scotland and northern England. The temperatures already falling off pretty smartly, the odd pocket of ground frost possible, but soon warming up in the sunshine tomorrow and a smashing morning. Lots of sunshine around, the mist and low cloud clearing, so a really lovely morning to get out. Just a bit of a change from lunchtime onwards, and then the cloud in the south will bubble up and we'll see 1 or 2 sharp showers, but we'll look at those in a moment. Let's concentrate on the sunshine, and for Scotland, a beautiful afternoon. Again, we'll see temperatures in places getting up to 23 Celsius, 73 Fahrenheit. I should think around 20 degrees in Glasgow itself, 17 Celsius for Aberdeen. Northern England again enjoying the sunshine, a beautiful afternoon. 23 Celsius in Manchester, 73 Fahrenheit, just a light breeze. As you can see, the further south we head, the cloud bubbles up a little bit. It'll still feel warm, there'll be a good deal of dry weather, but there's a chance of some showers, particularly from London westwards. well scattered, but they could well be on the heavy side. 1 or 2 for the southwest as well, probably dry in Plymouth itself. Some mistiness around the north coast of Cornwall, Devon, and around the south and west of Wales. But for North Wales, you'll do okay with some sunshine, and Northern Ireland staying dry with some sunshine as well. So the main emphasis is on fine and warm weather for the middle of the week. Now tomorrow night some mist and low cloud will form again, but that'll clear pretty smartly on Thursday. And again we're looking at fairly quiet weather, still light winds, still the warm sunshine filtering through, top temperatures getting up to say 22 Celsius. But the last warm day that across Scotland, because on Thursday night and Friday we'll see really quite a dramatic change. A cold front coming in across the north, bringing some wet weather and introducing a northerly flow across northern Britain for the weekend, even snow across the higher parts of Scotland. So for the time being, enjoy the fine weather and the warmth.
The one to watch tonight.
Mum, I remember, is not the woman she is now.
One Life, next on BBC One.
What's wrong with these signs? Yes. Find out on our website. Never mind the full stops. A new panel game. Thursday at 10:30 on BBC4.
The world's most powerful army. Defeated by one man.
Winter or summer, we're going over the Alps.
We fight for life! Raised to conquer.
I'll have my revenge on Rome.
Destined to become a legend of war.
We will be together again.
Hannibal, Sunday at 8:30 on BBC One.
Living with Alzheimer's, a mother and daughter cope with strength and humour now on BBC One. With some strong language, it's a new series of One Life.